The Alpha Sessions with Ron Laver.
Hi, and welcome to another edition of Alpha Sessions. My name's Ron Laver, and today I'm talking to Connor Christian, who is the lead singer of the band Southern Gothic. The band and your involvement of it goes back quite a few years, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I started this band in about 2002, actually, under a different name, and over the years, we sort of transformed our sound a bit and went from being a strictly rock band to kind of incorporating some of the stuff I grew up with, some of the more country and twangy elements, and we became the Southern Gothic back in 2009, officially, and been doing it ever since.
You had an album. Was this not your first release? The album Hometown.
Oh no, that was our first. That was our first on on a big label.
Oh right.
We put out a couple on a small Atlanta label called Vintage Earth, and we'd had a couple records out on that. And then, and actually, New Hometown we put out ourselves, and then we put it out as two separate albums, and it got picked up by a record company in Los Angeles, and they put the two short albums together and made one 20-song album and released that, and that was kind of when we started really building our our fan base here in the States.
Because I was very impressed with the 20-track album. You don't see many of those around these days.
Yeah, I know. We'd put out two 9-song EPs or short albums or whatever they were, and when we signed with Rocket Science, we said, well, if you're going to put this out, so many people have already bought this record, at least give them something new. So we recorded 2 new songs to add to it. One of them was a cover of an old Guns N' Roses song from my youth, and then another one was a song I'd written recently called "Be All Right," and so we put them together and made those bonus tracks and 20-song album, and that made concerts tough because everybody had a different favorite. So we'd be over there, we'd be the opening act, and we get 25 minutes to open for ZZ Top or Tim McGraw or Willie Nelson, whoever it was, and people would be yelling stuff at us, and we're like, we got time for 6 songs, y'all. We can't get them all in. So,
and so the album Hometown. What year was that released in?
That came out in 2013.
It's 2013, and you had a hit single off of that, didn't you? Or was certainly one that did very well in the country.
Yeah, it did. It did pretty well for us. It was kind of a surprise to all of us, and that song was called "Sheets Down." And it was really, really good. And we got lucky enough to make a really killer video. And I think that helped a lot. People saw the video and it was different and fun. And people wanted to see that, and sort of got them hooked on the song that way.
Well, I've only just caught up with that period of your music, and I was going to comment on the video "Sheets Down." It's a great video, really, really, really good, and projects the music in a really well way. Although I did feel slightly sorry for your
for Elena,
for your fiddle player. She seemed to get the bulk of the rain on the video.
She did. Yep. No, we went out and we bought her like an old throwaway fiddle it was really nice looking, but it was warped and it was unusable. So we're like, all right, this is going to be, she's like, what do I need this for? We're like, well, actually, like, come on, you want to be the star of the band, right? We're going to need you to, we're going to need you to dance in the rain for about 2 hours.
Excellent. Absolutely excellent. And then have you released anything between then and now?
I did a little solo project in 2017. I moved to Nashville in 2015, and just kind of after New Hometown had settled down, I moved up here take a job writing songs for other artists. And in 2017, I put out a collection of songs. As you know, Southern Gothic was kind of on a hiatus. I put out a collection of songs that I'd written for the Southern Gothic, but that I worried that were maybe, by the time we got back to making records, we're going to kind of be a little dated. And I think that was right, because, you know, when I listen back to that collection of songs I put out as a solo artist, they definitely wouldn't fit with what we're doing now, with the evolution. And I kind of just felt that evolution moving along, and thought, if I don't release these songs now, they're never gonna make it out. So.
Okay, well, you've got a new EP out at the moment. It was released in early December, and we're going to hear some tracks off of that. Can you tell me something about Upon Your Love?
Yeah. So for a few years now, I've gone out once a year to this songwriters retreat with a bunch of other Nashville songwriters out in the western part of the United States, just way out in the middle of the desert on top of this mountain. And this little tiny community of people, and they invite us all into their homes. And, you know, usually there's 12 to 15 of us, and each one of these houses in this little community takes a songwriter and puts them up. And every night, one of the different houses does a big dinner for everybody. And it's a real cool thing. We can get out there and kind of, you know, get away from the city and you know, concentrate on writing, and kind of concentrate on fellowship with other writers, and making those relationships stronger. And this actually, Up on Your Love, was one we wrote. I wrote with a couple other of the writers out there. We'd barely opened our eyes. We were sitting out on the back porch of one of these houses, and just watching the western sunrise over the mountains out there. And you know, we got to talking about an idea that excuse me, Russell, one of my co-writers, had, just about, you know, that feeling the first time when you wake up next to somebody that you've been, you know, that's been something that you know, you've both been maybe working toward, that you've both, you know, had those feelings for each other. And you know, we sat down and we talked about it, and Russell had a just one line about you're like a hummingbird outside of my window. And from there, the four of us, you know, knocked that thing out in about an hour and a half, and still one of my favorite songs that we wrote during that retreat.
Girl, this ain't a drunk text. Hell, I ain't even drunk yet. I ain't looking for a late night kiss. Now there's a little more to this, so if you're coming over, baby, stay over. It's time to write where I wanna be lying. When that first light hits the horizon, you're like a hummingbird singing the song outside of the window. It's Sunday morning, sunrise kissing the bell. You're that smile that opens up my eyes, and I can't get enough of waking up. Oh, on your love. Oh, waking up. Oh, on your love. To you and Omega, wearing nothing but your hair up. I'm wide awake and thinking about what you might be dreaming. And girl, I can't sleep when you're next to me. Every little minute, I don't want to miss it. Oh, it's a beautiful thing. You're like that hummingbird singing a song outside of the window. It's Sunday morning, sunrise kissing the bell. Smile
The Alpha Sessions with Ron Laver.
Is co-writing something you do a lot of?
It definitely goes in phases for me. Back in the New Hometown days, I wrote a lot of those, maybe most of those songs by myself. And then really, as I was putting that record together, was the first time I'd ever worked with other writers outside of a band situation. Sometimes you write with the guitar player or whatever, but actually sitting down with just someone outside of your musical circle just to write songs, that didn't start until kind of the second half of New Hometown. Now living in Nashville, and there's so many great writers nearby, I definitely do a lot more co-writing than solo writing. And I found it's a good way to keep myself accountable, make myself actually get up and do the writing. Because if it's just me, there's nobody to say, hey, you haven't written the song in 2 days or whatever. So having those writers on my schedule helps in that way. And of course, like I said, there's so many great writers here in Nashville. A lot of the best writers in the country move here to write. So that also, it's pretty motivational. Just keeps me trying to keep up with some of these other guys and girls.
When you go to one of these sessions, do you go there with some ideas, and if you do, if the other guys have come with ideas, how does that work?
I think, for the most part, we all come in, we've all got a long list of ideas that we've come up with over time. And, I might be, say, oh, I have this idea and I've been saving it to write with Channing Wilson. I've been saving it, to write with Tom O'Connor, because I feel like they could really bring something to this idea. But that being said, you get in a room, there's 2-3 of you, and you just start telling each other your ideas. And usually there'll be one somebody says that everybody will gravitate to. If there's 3 of us in a room, I might say something and one of the other guys says, oh yeah, I could get into that. And he says something and he says, oh yeah. And then finally the third guy says something and we're all like, oh yeah, that's the one. That's what we need today. So, it all depends on the mood in the room and kind of your prep for those sessions. Like I said, when I'm writing with, writer X, then I kind of look through my book before I get there. And I think, what's a good fit for, what is she going to get into? Also, a lot of times you're writing with artists. So you've got to take their style into account, but try not to box yourself in too much because, if I'm writing with, and I'm not, but, if I'm writing with Carrie Underwood, you don't want to say, okay, well, this is what she did on her last album, so this is definitely what she's going to want to do on her next album. But you want to be familiar with where they came from, so you can at least kind of try to throw something their way that something that they're going to connect with. So that's a big part of it as well.
Yeah, so that must widen your outlook. If you were writing on your own and only on your own, you'd be, I guess, very boxed in, wouldn't you, within your own thoughts and thought patterns. But mixing with other people and hearing their ideas and taking into account other performers that you might be writing for must sort of stretch your boundaries in terms of, the way you think about things, the way you might write a song if it was totally just down to you.
Yeah, because if I'm writing just for myself, I may have a line and think, well, that's really clever and I love that, and then look at it and say, I would never sing that. That would never, that just doesn't fit coming from me. It also, sometimes you look at songs and you write them as a character, maybe, but when you're writing songs that are going to get heard by other people and possibly recorded by other people, that, I don't know, lends a little bit of, I'm trying to think of the word here. You feel like, okay, so maybe Kip Moore's going to do this song. Maybe so-and-so's going to do this song, and they could really embody this character. They could really, make this song feel honest and real. And, I grew up, my dad was a soldier and a diplomat. And so I grew up in all over the world. And sometimes when you're writing country music and you're writing about your hometown and this, that, and the other thing, I know if I sang it, it would come off as really inauthentic because, I didn't have that experience that so many other people did growing up and knowing the same people coming up or whatever. But knowing that there's, that we're going to be pitching these songs to guys that can really be that guy in the song and have been that guy in the song, it gives me a little more freedom to explore somebody else's point of view, and not feel inauthentic doing it.
Hmm. That's an interesting point you made there. Yes, I understand your father was a U.S. diplomat, army, and you travelled the world from an early age, and in fact you never really had a hometown, did you? And yet, going back to the original album that you released called Hometown, was that you trying to claim a hometown?
Well, no, actually, yeah, that's not that record was actually called New Hometown.
Right.
And it was from the line, the title track was Every Night I Have a New Hometown. It was about being on the road as a musician and kind of connecting with people. And because I don't have that place that, that I called home, or that I have those memories of growing up, that I'm able to kind of be a chameleon, and if I'm in Chicago, I'm from Chicago. If I'm in Alabama, like I'm a hometown Alabama boy, whatever. Growing up as I did, I grew up with a lot of people from all over the world, but when you'd meet other Americans, it didn't matter whether they were from, tiny town in the South, or they're from New York City or Los Angeles or wherever. It didn't matter. They grew up on a farm in Wisconsin. They were American. So, you were drawn to those people because they had, as different as those parts of America are, you still had those similar touchstones, things that you can relate to about that person and the way that, the way they grew up. And it was weird because I grew up like that. I'd never really seen racism. I didn't realize that it was a real thing until I moved back to the States and, got to actually, interact with people. And when you don't have that, that outside force saying, these are your people, and then there's a lot of your people. So people, break into little clans and little tribes. And that, that was a real shock to me when I moved back to the States.
Talking again about your new album, your current album, Burning Moonlight, on your website, you put a notice up just before it was released, in fact in October, on the website, that everything had changed, new band members, new music coming. And I since have seen, reading your bio and that you said up to that point your music was sort of honed on the road. Your tracks, yeah. Everything you've written was straight out into the public, played live, and then you'd then bring them into the studio to record an album. But this new album was done completely opposite. That you went into the studio really with nothing but some ideas, I guess.
Yeah. So, those other songs, I'd write them, I'd bring them to the band, we'd rehearse them at sound check. I think that was a good 5-year period where we were doing 200 shows a year and not a single rehearsal. The rehearsals were the shows and the shows were the rehearsals. And so by the time these songs would get there, we get to the studio, we've played the song 200 times. I know every place where I'm going to say, yeah, or woohoo, whatever. I know every little nuance of my vocal performance. I'd worked out my guitar solo. I knew exactly how that song was supposed to sound. And these new ones, I played them a bunch at songwriter nights. It wasn't like I'd never played these songs. I lived in them to a degree, but I hadn't gotten up with the band and done them. And, for example, the song, Ain't Gonna Lie. Sorry, I was having trouble remembering what the song was. We got in there and we recorded it, recorded all the music, and then I went to start singing. And I'd only ever sung the song, just me and a guitar. I'd never had to like really push it in front of a band. And I go to sing the track, and it's like, this song is way too low. Like I can't really like get on it and do my rock and roll thing on top of it. So we had to go back and re-record the song in a higher key. It was like, oh boy, I hadn't thought about that. We hadn't really worked them out yet. So while the songs, as far as lyrics and verse and everything, like everything was fine, the performance angle was real different, and kind of cobbling that together on the fly in the studio was definitely a new experience. And if I can help it, not one that I'll be replicating in the near future. But that being said, I'm super happy with how everything came out, but the process was super stressful in a way that none of my previous records have ever been.
That track you mentioned there, Ain't Gonna Lie, was your first single release off the album, wasn't it?
Ain't Gonna Lie. That was another one that I'd written with some of my songwriter retreat friends, a married couple named Kelly and Troy Walls, who have a really good, really cool band called Carvin' Walls. That's a phrase here that people say all the time. Say, it's kind of a very country phrase. People say, "Well, I ain't gonna lie." ... And they'll put in whatever, whether it's an embarrassing truth or whether it's it's like, well, I wasn't gonna say anything, but you asked. And so that song is all about sitting with somebody and kind of a new relationship, and you're trying to keep it cool and not show all your cards, but then she straight up asks you, well, how do you feel about me? Are you in love with me or whatever? It's like, well, I wasn't going to say anything, but since you asked, be careful what you ask for, kind of idea. So, we thought it was a cute idea, and that song came together relatively quickly in just a few hours. And we had a great time writing it. And those guys are always fun to write with. And that song, and that song definitely has the best guitar solo on the record by a big margin. That's a pretty smoking guitar solo. I'm real happy with that.
One thing we haven't mentioned is that the 6 tracks appear in a sort of storyline, don't they? Of falling in love, meeting someone, falling in love, going through the motion sort of thing, and then the breakup at the end. Although the breakup is actually the first track on the record, isn't it?
Yeah. I've seen so many movies where you start watching the movie and like the guy's in the middle of dying. He's just been shot, and he's like, well, let me tell you how we got here. So that was kind of the idea, was we'd start with the very end, and then we jump back to the beginning and tell the story through. But we're hoping that everybody's got the album on repeat, so they just cycle through the thing, and and they can start it wherever they want. I
like that. It's a often used trick in films and TV dramas.
We're over, baby. Why can't you let it go? We keep starting over, and it's really starting to take its toll. I wanna see you smiling, even if it ain't with me. Don't wanna be the bad guy, maybe that's what I gotta be. Trying to be your hero, if I can't love you, then maybe there's someone else that can. If it takes me losing just so you can end up winning, if you need someone to take the blame, girl, I'll be your villain. I'll be your villain. Love ain't a railroad track, I'm trying to tie you down. How can we stop moving on if you keep stopping by my house? Wish we were like a movie with a happy end, but this is real life, baby. We ain't getting it back again. Tried to be your hero, tried to be your Superman. Honey, if I can't love you, then maybe there's someone else that can. If it takes me losing just so you can end up winning, if you need someone to take the blame, girl, I'll be your villain. Be your villain. We try to treat a day like an endless road. Honey, I can't help but love you. That's why I gotta let you go. Try to be your hero, try to be your Superman. Honey, if I can't love you, then maybe there's someone else that can. If it takes me losing just so you can end up winning, if you need someone to take the blame, girl, I'll be your villain. Ooh, I'll be your villain. Yeah, if it takes me losing just so you can end up winning, I'll be your villain. If it takes me losing just so you can end up winning, I'll be your villain. Yeah, 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 I'll be your villain. Yeah, yeah, I'll be your villain. Yeah, yeah, I'll be your villain.
The Alpha Sessions with Ron Laver.
I just want to ask you go back a little bit and ask you about your musical influences. I guess growing, traveling around the world, were you exposed to different cultures' music, or being in a sort of a diplomatic army or military type environment? Was what you were listening to generally what you would have listened to in the States?
Yes and no, probably more no than yes. We lived in places that were non-English speaking places. We lived in South Korea, we lived in Indonesia, we lived in Guam, we lived in Singapore, and then later places like Brussels. But really, for the early part of my life, it was a lot of Asia, and so there'd be one armed forces network television station and one radio station. So sure, there'd be a little bit of American music, but then going to school, and I went to the international school wherever I was. I didn't go to school like on an army base. So you'd be exposed to what the other kids were listening to, and some of it would be American music, and some of it would be, we were in Asia, so Australian music was, a lot more accessible than it was in the States at the time, and and then you'd get these Korean rock bands or Japanese rock bands or whatever, and people would listen to them, and so that's what you'd listen to, and I didn't realize this. I didn't realize that I thought because I was around a lot of Americans that I was listening to the same things as other American kids. And then I moved back to the States, and people are talking about these bands, and I'm like, who's that? And they're like, what do you mean? You've never heard of Guns N' Roses? I'm like, oh no. They're like, they just played the stadium last night. And I'm like, oh no, I never heard of them. It was weird. A lot of the stuff that would really break through, especially when I was in primary school, which was when I lived in Seoul. A lot of the stuff that really broke through there were movie soundtracks. So I had the Footloose soundtrack, I had the La Bamba soundtrack, I had Who's That Girl, which was a movie that never really did much, but Madonna had most of the she was the star of the movie, and most of the soundtrack was her, were her songs. And so, movie soundtracks were one way that I really connected with music as a young kid. But it definitely was not what was popular here and there. Like I said, Madonna, Michael Jackson, there'd be some that broke through, but more often than not, bands that I listened to as a kid, like Loudness. I came back to the States and people are like, what? I'm like, oh, that Japanese band, Loudness. People are like, no, we don't know Loudness. So, my bad. How about Guitar Wolf? No Guitar Wolf. Okay.
So did you think that foreign influence filtered its ways through to your music in the early days or even today?
Well, I think it's coming back a little for me, a little bit more now, because as I got older, I got into whatever kinds of music I got into, hard rock and that kind of thing that you get into when you're a teenager. And so, of course, when I started playing covers, we're playing all the the hard rock, the Nirvana and the Metallica and that kind of stuff. And then as I got a little older, and really started kind of coming into my own, I guess, as a songwriter, I would lean more toward, folk type music, even though I'd never really listened to it. And a lot of the kind of country music stuff that started making appearances, a lot of that was from the stuff that my dad listened to in the other room. Like it was here, it was back there somewhere. I never really listened to it, but I guess I did. And so, that started coming around. And, at the time I had a band with two fiddle players and banjo players and all this stuff. And so I definitely wrote for the band. I wrote thinking, okay, what would be good? What can I do to involve everybody's skills? And, I wrote for the show more than anything. It's like, okay, where can we have like a big double fiddle battle, and that kind of thing. And with this album, with this EP, I was writing songs. Initially, all these songs were written to pitch to other artists. And a couple of them got cut by other artists. But when it came time to record them, I feel like I went back to a lot of those pop roots that I'd kind of grown up on. A lot of the Michael Jacksons of the world, the Madonna, the Paula Abdul, the stuff I listened to when I was just a little kid. And I think we brought a lot of those, just those little moments in on the new record. And that's why it leans a lot more pop than the last couple of records we did.
But it's still got a country feel to it, I think.
Sure. Yeah. We just didn't stick to as, I think on the old records, it was like only, stringed instruments. We're not going to mess with anything else. And on this, especially writing in Nashville, everybody plays guitar. So a lot of times I'll be the one playing piano in the room, because a lot of folks here don't play piano. And as a result, just because of that, I've become a better piano player. And so we got time to record this record. And I was like, well, what if we had these, synthesizers? And what if we had these these different sounds and stuff that I've been exploring the past couple of years? And I think that's how we ended up with a lot of the, strangely enough, more modern sound, because I went back to my old man roots, like stuff that I listened to, 35 years ago. So
I definitely think people are influenced by their parents' music tastes.
It was weird. It was kind of a two-tiered thing for me when it came to stuff that they listened to, like I guess what you'd call oldies. Anything like Richie Valens or Buddy Holly or Big Bopper, or even like the doo-wop stuff, the Beach Boys. I have always loved that stuff from the time I was a kid on. and I think especially when you look at New Hometown songs like 16 Bars, a lot of that vibe comes through. But for some reason, my dad was a big country music fan, and I was just like, nope, I'm not. I don't want any part of that. And I don't know what it was. I missed out on so much because every year he would go to this big thing called Frontier Days, which is like a rodeo and a country music thing, and they'd have like every country music star in the world that would play, night after night after night. And every year he'd invite me and my brother to go, and every year my brother would go and I would not. So I don't know what it was about country that made me so angry as a kid, but obviously it was in there because now you look at my record collection. I don't know if you probably can't really see it, but it's pretty insane collection of vinyl, a lot of which I inherited from my dad. But there is a ton of old Emmylou Harris. There's early Tanya Tucker records. There's of course there's Elvis. There's all that stuff that you couldn't have paid me enough money to listen to at 13 years old. But now I quite enjoy it. So however that works.
And how much do you regret not seeing all those artists live? Is that something you regret, or?
Yeah, I mean, I guess looking back, the concerts would have been cool. I think more than anything, I regret not having those experiences and time with my dad. More than the music. It's funny. One of my friends here in town is the daughter of Tanya Tucker. And so I've known her for a long time. We've written together for, a whole bunch. I had the chance to see her, Tanya Tucker, when she was pretty young, and I didn't go. This is one of those trips. So I never really paid attention. And anyway, I finally, I went and collected all these vinyl records from my dad's house. And, I'm looking through them and I find this Tanya Tucker record, pull it out, and it looks exactly like my friend Presley. I was like, oh my God, you look just like your mom. She's like, yeah. I was like, she's like, you don't know what my mom looks like? I'm like, actually, no, I didn't know what your mom looked like. I know her what she looks like now because she's around, but I'd never seen an old Tanya Tucker video or album cover. So like I said, I missed out on a lot of stuff, and some of it I regret. But who knows what kind of music I'd be making if I had gone along with it. Maybe I'd have been making countries from the time I was in high school. I don't know.
Okay, let's just look to the future now. I guess you're probably like us in lockdown at the moment still.
Yes. Yeah. There, where I live in the South, people are not, they're not super careful here. So, they don't take it super seriously. There's a lot of anti-maskers and that kind of thing. But that being said, we're all hoping that this vaccine is gonna do something for us, gonna help us, gonna be able to get back out there. Right now we're putting together plans for some live shows. We're gonna hopefully do a couple of weeks in the States to get warmed up, and then we're gonna come to UK and Scandinavia and maybe Germany and France, and we'll see if the songs keep kind of spreading out. Then we'd love to spend the rest of 2021 over there and just escape whatever craziness is happening here. But that all remains to be seen. We've got a new record. I've got a new record written. So if we can get some label support, then we'll get that recorded, and it'd be great to be able to have the new record to tour on when we get over there.
Well, I guess like everyone, but we're certainly so starved of live music in this country. Although I must say the music industry has done very well online shows and things, which have been great. But you can't beat live music in the room. And,
yeah.
And so if you can, have you got any ideas where in the UK you might play, or is it too early for that?
It's a little early for that. We're gonna do our best to make it a pretty extensive tour and get to every corner. Um, especially as UK is not that big, so I feel like we can probably take a month and hit just about everywhere. So that's the hope.
We'll look forward to that, and of course, if you're we normally in normal times we do these in our own studio. We'd have you
Okay.
in, we'd chat and get you to play live for us in the studio. So if you, we're not far out of London. We're in North London, and on the tube.
Great. Well, I'll have the band with me, and we can do a something real cool. This last song I'm going to play for you. I've got the guys were nice enough to send over some backing tracks for me, so I'm going to play the backing tracks and play my part along with theirs, so you can at least get at least for this last one, you can kind of get a vibe of what the band sounds like acoustic.
So that'll be the track "Past Midnight."
Yep, that's our current single. Well, Past Midnight's really maybe just that first time you spend some time with that person. It's those first minutes of really electric chemistry, and you're thinking, do I have something here? Is there that, is this going to be is this going to be something big, or is this just an exciting moment? And that's we find our couple in the song sitting at a bar talking, and they probably should have gone home and gone to bed. They got to go to work in the morning, but here it is. It's just past midnight, and they're still talking and drinking and laughing and exploring where this is going to go.
All right, well, it's been so much fun getting to chat and play for everybody today. Thanks for tuning in, checking it out. I'm Connor Christian, singer of the Southern Gothic, and this is the single from our latest EP, Burning Moonlight. The song is called Past Midnight, with a little help from my friends. The clock keeps ticking, we keep talking. Don't know where this is heading, but I know one thing: you could be home right now. You could check out, went back to your couch. You could be winding down instead of losing sleep. It's a little past midnight, must be something going alright. You're still sitting by my side, burning moonlight. We keep this thing going on and on. Your lips fit real good against my lips. It's like we're on our own island. I could spend my whole life loving you past midnight. The clock's still ticking, drinks still pouring. It's getting later and later and later, but we just ignore it. You could be home right now. You could check out, went back to your couch. You could be winding down instead of losing sleep. It's a little past midnight, must be something going alright. You're still sitting by my side, burning moonlight. We keep this thing going on and on. Your lips fit real good against my lips. It's like we're on our own island. I could spend my whole life loving you past midnight. Yeah. Woo. This was nothing, we wouldn't still be here. Now we wouldn't still be here. It's a little past midnight, must be something going on right. You're still sitting by my side, burning moonlight. We keep this thing going on and on. Your lips fit real good against my lips. It's like we're on our own island. I could spend my whole life loving you past midnight. past midnight.